Morning. Okay, good afternoon. I'm not gonna say good morning. It's supposed to be in the morning. Thank you for coming. I know it was last minute. I changed it to this afternoon. I had to take care of something this morning, but here we are. So we're gonna talk about, go over, I guess it's a workshop, right? For the new buyer broker commission agreement form. I'm gonna go through it and discuss some of the things that you guys should know, and maybe you can discuss with your buyers. But also, at the end of this, we're gonna have you guys fill out one of these forms. Just to go through the exercise of filling it out, and then we'll all take a look at it and see what you guys entered in the form. So with the form itself is called the Buyer Representation and Broker Compensation Agreement, the BRBC. So when you log into Zip Forms and you go to the form section and type in BRBC, there's going to be two of them on there that are going to come up. It's the same form. Just click on the first one. They're named a little bit differently on the list. But click on the first one, and so what comes up is a packet of forms. It's the BRBC, but it includes the agency disclosure. It includes the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. I'll show you guys. We'll go over it. So let's first start with the agency disclosure. You guys know what this is. You've seen it before. This form pretty much tells you what a seller's agent is and what their duties are, what a buyer's agent is and what that buyer's agent's duties are, and then like dual agency and so forth, and what the seller and buyer responsibilities are. So on this form, you're pretty much saying, I'm representing the buyer, so you're gonna check the box for buyer, and you're gonna enter your buyer's name. And then you're gonna enter as agent, Coldwell Banker Platinum Properties, and the company DRA number, which is 01516164. Again, that's 01516164. And then you're the agent, so the buyer's being represented by you. So in this case, I'm just going to type my name. And then my license number should pop up here, so I'll just select it from there. So here, you're saying, this is my buyer. Check mark the box next to buyer, buyer's name, brokerage name, DRE license number, agent name, agent DRE license number. Pretty simple, right? So if you need to explain this to your client, that's pretty much what it is. It's the duties for each party. The next form that we're in, this second page, it just explains the different civil codes associated with the agency, and then it shows you a little screenshot of what the contract looks like, the purchase agreement as far as who's representing who. So nothing needs to be done on page 2. And then it takes you straight into the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. And if you notice, the date revised is July 24th. So this is the most recent up-to-date one that we're using. Hopefully they don't change it again. The first thing we're going to notice up here is the date prepared. And the date prepared serves as two purposes. The date you're preparing it, right? So today's date, this is when I'm preparing the form, and also a reference date to any other forms that go with this form, right? That reference this form. So if I'm including an addendum, it's an addendum to the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement dated 7/25/24. So that's what that date is for. And so number 1, right to represent, and then the buyer's name should have already populated in here because you entered it into the other form. So that's the buyer's name. And the buyer's granting Coldwell Banker Platinum Properties, the broker. The non-exclusive right, unless exclusive, is checked down at the bottom of paragraph 2A. So for now, it's just non-exclusive. To represent the buyer in acquiring a real property or manufactured home. So terms of representation are just pretty much below here. So we're going to talk about that. On section A1, representation period, you're going to enter the beginning date, and it cannot exceed 3 months. So it can be 1 month, 2 months, but it cannot exceed 3 months. So you would enter a beginning date and an ending date here. There's a chair over here. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So and it spells them out here, not to exceed 3 months. All right, unless it's if Rich was here, he would have unless it's an LLC or a corporation, then you can go longer than 3 months. So letter A2 or section A2, type of representation, and the default is non-exclusive. we want to check the box to say exclusive, so that they're only working with you. And if they work with another agent and within this 2 months, they submit another a purchase contract for another a property with another agent and it closes, you are also going to get paid because they should have worked with you, right? And that's what that checkbox is for there. So make sure that that box is checked.
After 3 months, we can renew it, right?
For 3 months.
We can renew it after 3 months,
You can renew it after 3 months. There's an extension, or you could just do a new one.
the new one.
So property would be acquired, section B. So B1 property type, the default is single family residential, including condominiums and manufactured homes. Sure.
This is 3 months or is it 90 days? 3 months,
Well, it says 3 months right here.
but like if there's, it's not affecting inclusive 31 days or 100.
It says 3 months, whether it's 28 days or 31 days, it says 3 months. Yeah. And I'm sure they didn't say 90 days for a reason. You know? So it could be 3 months from, it could be 3 months from February 15th through, what, April 15th? Wait, so. February, March, April?
Yeah.
So 3 months. And then here you can check mark any of these other ones, but defaulted is single family residential, so you can leave that alone. But this, you can also check this box if this contract is for like a specific property. Or if you have a list of properties that, let's say you're working with the buyer and the buyer says, hey, I'm interested in these 3 properties and I want you to write up offers for me on these 3 properties only. So you can check that box and just type in those properties. And then this is only for those properties. That's what it looks like here because it's not spelling anything out. So I'm not gonna check that box. We don't want that checked. The next section, B2 location, you can enter a county. So like Sam, you're working with a buyer that's looking in San Bernardino County and Riverside County and all these counties. So you can check mark county. Let me uncheck city. So in your situation, you would type in, is it just San Bernardino?
San Bernardino.
You have to put it in a location.
Yes.
What about
You can say Southern California. You don't have to do that.
Better.
Yeah,
It's a cell phone.
yeah.
But you have to put, you have to write something.
Well, yeah, you have to write something because these are the options it's giving you. If you don't write anything, then it's like, what, you know. Yeah, I mean, how likely is it you're gonna have a buyer that's looking in San Francisco and San Diego and, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's usually gonna be in one county.
I was looking in Orange County, as she said.
Yeah.
And she bought in Irvine
Okay.
with another
What did
agent.
she
She
know
did
that
not mention anything about that area.
with another agent?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you can just write all the counties in here, like
Yeah.
around here.
Southern California.
Yeah,
is
for
better.
Southern California. Southern California counties.
Yes.
If, you know what, then what's considered Southern California counties? Right. Yeah, but where does it start? So I would just write them in. It just takes you a few minutes, just write in the counties that
Yeah, okay.
you're thinking about. So, but in this example, I'm gonna say this person's looking at Irvine and they know exactly what they want, so I'm just gonna do Irvine, you know, and that's what they want me to write in there. Additional description, I don't have an example of that. Section C, additional buyer preferences and priorities. So this is the one on letter C where it says, see attached buyer identification and preferences and priorities form. So usually this is gonna suffice, but if you wanna send this out ahead of time, check the box to include that form, and let me show you what that form looks like. So that form, it's a fillable form for your buyer. So when you go into zip forms, you can send this form ahead of time before you meet with them to sign this form, the agreement. And this is what it is.
Once you exit, does it go into your? Once you make that X mark. does it-
This is the form that doesn't include it automatically, because it appears that you should have sent them this before. Yeah. This is before you actually have them sign the agreement. So, or maybe you can send it with it, but have this be the first form, right? But they have to fill all this out. So what's the price range? Is it gonna be primary residence or secondary home or income property? Property type? So you guys get the picture here, right?
So you would like send the people forms to them and they
it would be fillable, yeah.
it's fillable on.
Yeah. So when you see the highlighted in color like this, that means that it's fillable on their end. All right, so this is the form. You don't have to include this, but you can if you want to. So let's go back to this page here. So section C. So I'm not gonna check that box because I don't want to include that form. Because I listened to what my buyer wants and I know, because I'm a great agent and I know exactly what they're looking for, so, and I wrote everything down on the phone call. So also on section D here, properties excluded from this representation. Maybe they've already seen properties with another agent or they submitted offers on other properties. And you want to make sure that, they want to make sure that those properties not included in this agreement. Because you're not going to get paid on that anyway if another agent showed us those properties. So if there are, then this is where you would type those properties in. Or if there's a list that her old agent provided to her of the properties that were shown to her or him, then they would provide that list to you. The buyer would give that list to you and you would just check this box and then include that list. In this case, my buyer didn't have a prior agent. They just came straight to me. So the best.
Is that text overflow in that 2 lines? Or only 2 lines there?
Yeah. Anytime there's a type fillable section and it doesn't fit in that section, it'll create a text overflow addendum.
Or
And it'll say section D7.
And if they just gave you like a Microsoft Word document with 10 properties on it.
You can
that's
click on
fine.
this box and it'll include that form. You can
Oh, there's a
include that
special
list.
form for that.
No, that you can just include the list, the attached list. So, and make it part of the contract, yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave that unchecked. So now we're gonna talk about broker compensation, and notice, the amount or rate of real estate commissions is not fixed by law, and it's never been fixed by law. We all know this, they're trying to make us look like criminals here. They are set by each broker individually and may be negotiable, but there's some brokers that say to their agents, don't take anything less than this. If they wanna try to negotiate, they'll just let them go, this is all we accept. But most offices are negotiable, so, and here it says that they may be negotiable between buyer and broker. And then see attached broker compensation advisory, which is part of this form as well. It's one of the forms that's included in this packet. So now we're gonna go to section E1, amount of compensation. This is where you're gonna enter a percentage, let's say, I don't know, 2.5%. Right, let's say, this is what I want you to pay me, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Or you could say, well, you know what, we're not gonna do 2.5%, I just want you to pay me $20,000. Right? So I'm gonna say 2.5%. But I just wanted to show you the option. So when you're filling this out, just know that you can fill either the percentage or the dollar amount if that's what you want to do. And sometimes the buyer will like to see a dollar amount instead of, they want to know how much they're paying you, right? Or the percentage. It just depends on the buyer. Or see attached compensation schedule. Maybe there's a compensation schedule that says, you could say something like, I don't know, if buyer buys the house within the first week, then they only pay me 1%. If it's more than 1 week, then they're gonna pay me 2.5%,
Yes,
right? So you can do something like that,
yeah.
and it'll motivate them to like, hey, let's find something right now, right? So
Exactly.
that could be a way to get them
Yes,
to not sit on the fence and like, hey, you're gonna have to pay me more after 2 weeks. So if you wanna pay me more, that's fine, but this is what's on the market.
that's
And
good.
that's just an example. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but that's an example of how you can use that, the compensation schedule.
How
So
can we write it here?
you would attach a separate compensation schedule, and I believe that's a form. That might be another form
Okay.
here. Doesn't say what form it is, but maybe an addendum.
And then,
Yeah, it could be an addendum. You can write it in there. So let's say, let's go back to where are we at? Section E2. Payments received by broker from seller or others. So this is something you make sure to explain to your buyers. If the broker, if we receive compensation from the seller, directly from the seller, or anywhere else for broker's representation of the buyer, so for the services that I'm providing for you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, then the amount should be credited against the buyer's obligation. So it's like saying, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if they pay me the full amount of commission or half of the commission, then you're responsible for the rest of it. So it credits towards what you owe me. It's not like they're paying me a commission and you're paying me a commission. It doesn't work that way. It's 2%, the 2.5% that you were obligated to pay me. If the seller says, I'm gonna pay you 1.5%, then the buyer still owes you 1%. That make sense? And then it says, buyers shall not receive any amount in excess of 2E. So if the buyer agreed to 1% on this agreement, they're only gonna pay you 1%, but they're asking in the purchase contract for the seller to pay 3%. The seller's not obligated to pay the 3%, they only pay 1% because that's how much your agreement is for. And anything excess that the seller said we agree to it, it doesn't go anywhere. You only get that 1%, and the buyer doesn't get a credit, and the agent doesn't get a credit for the additional money. You guys understand? Does that make sense?
There, I remember a meeting where it said, sending the RPA to be also send part of this, where it shows the percentage.
I wouldn't send it, I wouldn't send it unless they ask for it.
You don't send.
Yeah, unless they ask for it. But the purchase contract is just, the buyer's asking for them to pay commission, pay 3% or
You
2%.
just write it inside.
Yeah, you're gonna say 2% will purchase price or a dollar fixed dollar or whatever it is.
Feasible.
But first of all, we have to ask the agent how much the seller would, if he wants to pay.
Well, see, that's the thing, you're not supposed to ask the agent that, because
Also-
it's not between agents, you have to ask through the purchase contract. So when Richard says the buyer has to ask the seller, they're asking through the purchase contract. So when you submit an offer, there's a section that says the buyer would like the seller to pay some of the commission for my agent. And that's how this buyer is asking the seller. They're not calling them and saying, hey, Mr. Seller, what are you willing to pay? You can negotiate it through the contract. So then they counter. They say, we're not gonna pay 3%. We'll contribute 0.5%.
So originally, I thought part of one of the meetings I was in, it said buyer's agent, called listing agent. Before.
You can
seeing the
ask
property,
them.
before seeing the property going, hey, Sarah,
No,
I
yeah,
just wanted to know ahead of time, is your seller willing to pay any portion?
you can call and ask.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, you can call and ask. There's nothing that says you can't call and ask. But usually the buyer's gonna ask for it through the contract, but yeah, you can call the agent and ask.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying like.
Yeah, because on the, if I'm a listing agent, I would have that conversation with the seller asking, hey, just so you know, there's gonna be a lot of offers that are asking to pay for the buyer's commission. Are you open to that?
I'm just
And then,
thinking
yeah.
like especially like a first time buyer, like
Yeah.
I have another person buyer, he has barely any money to buy a house, he has zero money to pay me. I've already had this conversation with them. I told him last week about everything, and I was like, I'm just trying to figure it out. But even he said, he's like, I wanna work with you, Gina. So just go and ask every single listing agent ahead of time. And he's like, I'll only buy the houses that are willing to work with us with with your commission.
Well, see
He
that,
said that, but who knows if he really
well,
means
see,
that.
that can,
But
he,
that's what I'm wondering.
so he can possibly miss out on something on a property, right? Because maybe the agent didn't know that the seller is willing to. Because maybe the seller's receiving offers with people asking, and originally the seller said, no, I'm not gonna do it, but after seeing all those offers, then the seller says, you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead and offer something, right? And because the agent told you, no, he's not gonna do it, he might have missed out on that opportunity, so I would still submit it, even though the agent says, no, they're not willing to entertain it, I would still submit the offer, asking for it. Because you never know, maybe the seller's like, you know what? I'm tired of people coming into my house and I just want to sell it, I want to get rid of it, yeah, we'll pay them 1% or 2%, whatever it is, let's just do it, I don't want to go through all this. Yeah, because you don't know what their motivation is, you don't know what they might change their mind or who knows. So I would still submit it.
I want to be more clear, so it's what about the buy, the seller is agreed to, it's conditioned to, the commission to the buyer agent of like 3%.
Yes,
Then, so we got the contract with the buyer and 1%. Then you said we can't ask for the more than 1% of the seller.
Yeah.
You think it
That's
doesn't-
my
no, yeah, but there's some agents that are gonna try to do that.
But I remember
Yeah, it's the-
originally, like 2 months ago, when everything wasn't fun.
Yeah, no, but they changed it. So
I know they
before, the
changed
way
it,
the
like,
contract
months ago.
was before, this contract was, you can, if the buyer agreed to pay 1%, let's say,
No, I think it's the bigger one is the agent can take it. It's
Yes.
the-
They
yeah,
can't,
yeah,
but they
They
can't.
can't anymore.
No, that's what it says here, look.
One before.
It says,
Says that you
Either-
could.
yeah, but the new one says broker shall not receive any amount in excess of 2E, which is 2E this, sorry,
Yeah.
2E1 right here. The broker will not take more than this. That's it. And the money, it doesn't go anywhere. There's no, it doesn't go to the buyer, it doesn't go to the agent.
It used to be an option where, say that said 2%. And then they were actually paying 3%. There was one option where you could have taken the 1% and given it to the agent, or if there was an option, wasn't there, you give it to the.
So,
buyer.
so the way it was, it's like, let's say we had a 1% contract between you and you're my buyer, and then the MLS was offering 3%. So I would get the full 3%, and then that alleviates the buyer of their obligation. But there was also a box that you can check that says, Mr. Buyer, if you sign with me today, any commission that they pay over 1%, it'll be credited to you. And that would have made them sign, right? Oh, that sounds great, okay. But now they got rid of that completely. That's not an option anymore. So you don't get the money and they don't get the money.
So now the less, you will get the less.
The lesser of the numbers, yeah.
So we should
Less of
always
the numbers.
2.5 to 3 on the contract and then the.
Yeah, so
the
yes,
seller
yeah.
will put only one.
Yeah, you should always ask for like 2.5, 3%.
Yeah.
Yes,
The
you put
point
one,
is
so
the
whatever
buyer
you
is
put,
signing
you
the
put
buyer,
2.5,
then we can get.
so we get
Yes.
only one.
Even if the seller only agrees to pay 1%, the buyer still owes you
Yeah,
1.5% after that.
When we're breaking that down to our buyer, we call and say, hey, we're putting it at 3% because there's a chance that they'll give that.
Yeah.
But if they don't, it doesn't come out of your.
Yes,
your pocket anyway.
ultimately, like they agree to 3%, and then like, let's say the sellers end up paying 2%, and then your buyer, it's your family member, and you say, you know what? I'm not gonna make, hold you to that extra 1%. I'll just take that 2% they're offering,
Yeah,
Can do
and then you can do that.
and you could kind of just, I think that's kind of gonna be a way we kind of all operate when we're doing these buyer.
Yeah.
Deals and stuff.
Yeah, but if the sellers aren't offering anything, then they're bound, but pay 3%.
So
Which
technically-
again, you can say, you know what,
You
just
don't have
give me
to.
2%.
No seller will pay 3% anymore now.
But technically, does this say it? Signed at 3%, right? This thing's signed at 3%. And then. If they signed at 3%, but then the seller is gonna offer 1%.
So you will get the 1%.
Yeah, then the buyer only
The
owes you
buyer's
2%.
supposed to pay 2%. But
He
what if-
owes me 2%?
but what if I know the buyer doesn't even have the 2%?
You don't have to.
You don't have to enforce it.
I don't have to enforce it, I just. have to
Yeah,
write-
because
I
that's
just have to
between you
write-
and the buyer.
I just have to write an addendum or is it special?
No, what you could do is you could just, when you send your whatever this contract is, yeah, maybe an addendum to this contract to escrow, so that they can write it into the escrow instructions that, like your commission, yeah.
To be adjusted.
Yeah.
To numbers.
So the buyer will owe me the rest of it.
Yes, because remember, the buyer is agreeing to pay you.
Okay.
They've already agreed to pay you, and if anyone else pays you a portion of it, they're responsible for the rest of it.
For the rest, okay, okay.
Okay, so, moving on to, section E3, continue right of payment for broker involved properties. So you could do 90 days, you can do 120 days, but what this is pretty much saying, any properties that I showed you, you still owe me a commission on it pretty much, right? If you end up buying through another agent for the next 90 days. So I showed you this property, I did a CMA on this property for you, I virtually showed you the property on a virtual tour, while I was there. So you have to provide them a list of those properties, right? After, this is canceled. I think within 5 days of the cancellation or expiration. Yeah, so you give them a list, and then if they end up buying one of those properties, you're still entitled to permission for one of those properties, if they buy one of those properties. Up to 90 days, past 90 days, then they can go with whatever agent they want to. You guys understand that? Okay. So cancellation of rights of notice, so for non-exclusive, if we would have just left the default and not checked exclusive, then either party can cancel. And here you can check mark, within 2 days or 5 days or whatever it is, right? For exclusive, let's say the buyer wants to cancel, they send you cancellation today, then the contract doesn't cancel for 30 days.
Oh,
So you still have 30 days. And then within 5 days before those 30 days is over, you can give them a list of all the properties that you've shown them or you've worked with them with. Because this is exclusive and we want to make sure we check that box.
So the properties that you've shown them starts from the starting date, but if you showed them some before the actual agreement, they don't count?
I would put it. Wait, are they gonna, I don't know, I would still put them in there, why not? It's probably not covered, but I would still put them in the list. They're probably gone by now anyway, right?
Right.
In this market. So, okay, so now the next section is G, buyer financial personal information. So, G1, time to deliver buyer personal financial information. This one you're gonna ask for bank statements for the, you know, that shows you how much that they have money for down payment and their deposit. If they're gonna pay cash, whatever it is, and then possibly their loan approval, right? Or you can check this box, and when you check that box, you get this other form that the form is the BFPI. God, all these forms, there's so many now. Before I knew all of them, but now there's more I have to know. Where is it? It's coming up here.
Every time you click on that, it comes up.
No, I have it. I already have it in this set. It's not that one, it's the next one. So right here. So buyer financial and personal information. So this shows the buyer's name. This is something that I guess you would have to fill out and then they sign it. Because it doesn't allow for the buyer to fill this out. When you see the blue highlight like this, the light blue, that means the agent has to fill this out. So when you're talking to them over the phone and you're asking them these questions, you're filling this out. And then when you send the contract over for them to sign, then you include this for them to sign that all this information is correct.
Is it mandatory?
No, it's not mandatory. This is, I just wanted to show you because it's referenced there, what it looks like, and if you wanted to include it, you can. It's not mandatory again, but maybe it gives you a better idea, like who the loan officer is, and it's just information you have, right? What's their deposit, what's their down payment? Are they sending you a bank statement from their savings, from their checking, retirement, wherever? Let's see. The amount of additional available funds, maybe they have money coming in from, you know, their family, how much money, source of additional funds, you know, from parents or, I don't know, from mom, dad, cousin, whatever it is. Maximum loan amount, so maybe they are pre-approved for up to this much loan amount. And again, lender information, they're pre-approved or pre-qualified. So this is like a little questionnaire that you can talk to them over the phone. And then when you send over your buyer broker agreement, then you have them sign this as well, saying that this information is
You
correct.
have to have them sign this?
If you fill it out, it requires a signature down here. It's not a form that we require, but you might as well have them sign it. I mean, you're pretty much holding them to like, hey, this is what you said. You didn't lie to me, did you? Right? Like, I don't know, you signed this, you lied to me, this, you know?
What?
Yeah. But again, it's not required. I just wanted to show you if you check the box that will come up. So those are the two forms that I want to show you guys that were referenced here. So, but I'm not gonna check that box. I don't want to check that box. I just want them to give me their proof of funds and their pre-approval within 5 days. Sorry. So, G2, other financial considerations. Buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay broker. That's the one you want to check, Gina? But it's funny because you're saying, you're saying they're gonna pay me 2%, but they don't have money to pay me.
What do they have there?
I don't know.
We check
It
that.
doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, it's check what, is there some sort of buyer program that will pay us or something? Third party?
I wouldn't check that box. It just,
actually, it is from the closing cost, right? They will put the commission
We can accept.
under the present cost.
No, it's a-
Yeah, but they still have to pay that money.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah,
Yeah, but if they don't have the money for it, they're saying they don't have the money. I wouldn't work with a buyer that says they don't have money to pay me.
But if they don't have all of it, like you said, like, what if instead of charging them 2,000, 2%, you charge them 1%, check that box.
Can they afford to pay you 1%?
Oh, I,
If they can, you don't have to check with
oh,
us.
okay.
Yeah,
That's only if they can.
but like
You're giving
why,
them-
yeah, why would you submit an offer and represent them if you're not gonna make any money? You don't know if the seller is gonna pay anything. So you have to get paid from someone. So
You know what it says here? Is it G2?
G2,
G2. If seller does not pay as contractually required, buyer assigns to broker as a third party beneficiary any rights buyer has to pursue the seller for such compensation.
say that again?
If seller
Doesn't agree
does
to pay.
not pay as contractually required, so let's say at.
But yeah, but the
some point
seller's not
Yeah.
contractually required in
They're
this
not,
scenario.
but let's say somewhere in the process they were, right, you go into contract with them and they agree, originally they agree, yeah, no problem, we're gonna pay it. For some reason, something happened.
Yeah, the agent could go after the seller.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what that says.
yeah. But I don't know.
Buyers, broker.
Is there a way to make installment?
That's a good question. That you'd have to talk to Richard about that. I don't know. You know, that's something you have to talk to Richard about. Let's see, buyer intends to purchase, with the following loan product, which is not, so this might be like a VA loan, that the buyers, you know. They're gonna purchase with the VA loan that doesn't allow the buyer to pay commission. So at least you're checking the box, and they're still saying that they're gonna pay 2%, but within the purchase contract, they're asking the seller to pay those 2%. And so with the VA loan, I heard that they changed it now, which allows the seller to pay for the buyer's commission in that situation, where before they wouldn't. So you can check that box in that situation. Other terms, I don't know what other terms would be, maybe, I don't know, I'm gonna give them my vote for, you know, as a bonus, if they help me buy by this date, I don't know.
Could be barter. Could we say?
No, because how does the broker get their cut?
I'll take your job.
How is the?
And be on the boat too for. You're alone on the boat.
That's how you share.
Just not sharing the boat.
All right, so on the next page here, compensation of broker pretty much says, broker right to compensation. Let's go, it spells out what non-exclusive is, what exclusive is. Broker involvement, let's keep going here, this is all pretty self-explanatory. Continuation right of compensation, this is what I explained to you guys, that if the contract expires and you enter the 90 days, then any properties you show them, you're still entitled to commission within those 90 days if they end up purchasing one of those properties. So let's go down here to payment through escrow. So this is, you're gonna make sure your buyer knows is that payment through escrow, buyer hereby irrevocably assigns to broker the compensation provided for this agreement from buyers. Funds in escrow, buyer agrees to submit to escrow any funds needed to compensate broker under this agreement. So the buyer, by signing this, saying that they're going to submit the money for the commission to escrow, or the broker's commission.
Oh, gosh, all of it.
Yes. Yeah, so, as instructed, escrow and recording property involving buyer and seller, okay. So just so you know, that when they sign this, they're agreeing that they're gonna submit the money to escrow for your commission, because that's how we get paid, through escrow. Accounting for payments, let's see. So you guys already know, section G, payments received from, let's say, from the seller, credits towards the buyer's obligation, we talked about that. Cancellation of buyer representation, we talked about cancellation. Agency relationships, if, you know, letting know that you might be representing a buyer, seller, more buyers, more sellers, but you might be dual agent. Let's see. Broker authorizations and obligations, just a list of brokers' duties. Buyer's duties, obligations. Okay, so I highlighted these sections, 'cause I thought they were interesting too. Reasonable care and other professional assistance. A buyer is obligated and agrees to read all documents provided to buyer. I love that. And I found it in a few other places, but buyer is obligated and agrees to read all documents provided to buyer. So in your situation, Rima, your buyer, she can't say, I didn't read the
Yeah.
reports. She's obligated to read
Right.
everything, right? Number two, buyer agrees to seek desired assistance from appropriate professionals selected by buyer, such as those referenced in the attached buyer's investigation and advisory. And I'm going to show you because that's another form that's included in this packet. Number three, buyer's advice to read the attached buyer's investigation advisory. So they must read it, right? Or advised to, for a list of items and other concerns that may warrant investigation by buyer or other professionals. So either the buyer can investigate the property or they can hire professionals to do it. And also on letter D here, reports and investigation, buyer agrees to pay for reports, so let them know upfront, if you want to do an inspection, you're gonna have to pay for that inspection. So buyer agrees to pay for reports, investigations, and meetings arranged by broker for buyer. So even if the buyer says, Mr. Agent, Mrs. Agent, can you find an inspector for me and schedule it? Sure, I'll do that for you, but you're still obligated to pay, even though I scheduled it for you. Because they might say, hey, I'm not the one who called them, I'm not the one who scheduled it. Well, guess what? Look, you signed right there that anything that I do on your behalf, you're gonna pay for it. I mean, any investigations or meetings. Let's see, buyer material issues. Let's go down to attorney's fees. I thought this was interesting too. In any action, proceeding, or arbitration between buyer and broker arising out of this agreement, buyer and broker are each responsible for paying their own attorney's fees and costs, except as otherwise specified in paragraph 12A. But, right, saying, hey, I'm not gonna pay your attorney's fees, you're responsible for your own attorney's fees if something comes up. Let's see, management approval, dispute resolution, let's keep going here. Legally authorized signer, you guys know what that is, entire agreement. Oh, so here's section 15. If you check mark the box for exclusive, they also have to initial in this section. Saying that, yes, I do agree that this is gonna be exclusive, so by initialing here, I did see that box that was checked. And again, it talks about the compensation and the cancellation that they have 30 days. And then to cancel. If you cancel, then it expires in 30 days after that cancellation. Unless the contract ends prior to that. And then within 5 days of the effective date of cancellation, the broker, the agent should have given a list to the buyer of the properties they've shown them or worked with them on. So make sure that that's initialed by the buyers. And again, in section 16, they're confirming you agreed to 2.5%, right? We wrote it in page 1, but just to make sure that this is what you're agreeing to, 2.5%, okay. So there it is again, so they can't say, I didn't know, it's on there twice, how did you miss it? And you're required to read everything, right? Let's see. Entity buyers, if you're buying under a trust, LLC or anything like that, then you would check that box and then type in the name of the authorized signers. So like if the buyer's authorized to sign on behalf of the trust, you write the buyer's name here and then the name of the trust down here. But our buyer is not buying in a trust, they're just buying as an individual, so we're not gonna check that box. Just want to explain what that was. And it's just the information about the buyer and the brokerage and everything, so let's scroll on down here. But all this has to be filled out, right? Buyer's investigation advisory, this is one of the forms that was referenced earlier. And importance of property investigation, it kind of tells them, hey, why this is important to investigate the property and what the broker's obligations are. But number 3, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you are strongly advised to investigate the condition and suitability of all aspects of the property, including but not limited to the following. If you do not do so, you are acting against the advice of brokers. So when you give them this and you're saying, look, you can do a general condition of the property, inspection for general condition of the property and systems and components. You can do an inspection on square footage, age, boundaries. You can do an investigation on termites, wood destroying pests, the soil stability, like all of these reports, we're telling them, hey, you can do all these reports, you're allowed to do these reports. And if they don't do it, and then later on, they buy the house and something went wrong, and they say, well, it's my agent's fault, it's like, we advised you, if there's one of these things that you thought you might need, you should have done one of these reports or paid for one of these reports. Environmental hazards, so forth. So this is letting them know what types of reports they can acquire for the property or order for the property. Let's go over to the next page, broker compensation advisory. This is also included in the packet. And so when sellers list their property, it's pretty much saying what a listing agent does, and what a listing agent is responsible for, and then what a buyer's agent does, in this case here. The broker agent, the buyer, the agent, what they're required to do, their duties, right? And I highlighted this because I thought this was interesting. When enlisting a real estate broker to represent them, buyers agree to pay the buyer's broker when escrow closes, but the person responsible for payment may be negotiated in the transaction. So let's say that the buyer agreed to pay you 2%. But the buyer doesn't have money, and then the buyer's parents say, hey, we're gonna pay for them, saying they can do that. As long as it's paid.
And also, we can mention the installments here.
I don't know, that, we have to wait, I'll ask Richard about that, I'm not sure what that.
There is like, her client, this is the question. Can we raise, if the buyer doesn't have, the commission, can we raise the purchase price? And talk to the seller that the commission will go from inside the plus tax?
Well, here's the thing. If you offer more than what the property is worth, the appraisal is gonna come through, and they still have to pay that gap. So they still have to pay out of pocket to close. So would you rather pay out of pocket for the gap, or use that money to pay your commission? So either way, they're gonna have to pay out of their pocket.
If it is conventional, they can work with that.
If it doesn't appraise, let's say the house is $1 million,
No,
and you said the commission's 20,000.
Uh-huh.
So you offer 1,020,000.
Yeah.
When the appraiser is hired to evaluate the house, the appraiser says the house is only valued at 1 million. Now your buyer has to pay them $20,000 plus your.
No,
I think that's what I'm
saying,
Well, here's the thing, no, so with her example, if it appraised for $1 million, but you offer $1,020,000, then the lender's gonna say, we only approved $1 million, we're not gonna, you have to come in with the extra 20,000. And so regardless, you're still gonna have to come in with that extra 20,000, even though the seller's gonna pay it. Agrees to pay it, you still have to pay for that extra money, so regardless.
but this, if it is for conventional, they can work it with the appraisal, they can work it out and let them put it, the appraisal is 1,020,000. But if it is not conventional with the government, you cannot,
So it's manipulating the appraisal?
yes.
That sounds like fraud to me.
But I've heard about that.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe,
They said if it's conventional, it doesn't, they
Yeah.
can work it out.
Never heard.
yeah, I don't think
Because
that's,
nobody can manage, nobody even knows who the appraiser is. I don't know the appraiser, listing agent doesn't know the appraiser, buyer seller doesn't know. the
They-
even the loan officer doesn't.
Not anymore. Many years ago, because of that situation,
Uh-huh.
they changed it. The lender calls a third-party company. So the lender has no idea which appraiser is going to send out, because there were so many lawsuits a long time ago about that.
I've heard of that on the end of
Recently.
Maybe they're doing some funny business.
It is a bunch
It's, they said if it is conventional, it's easy.
Yeah.
If it is FHA, no.
I don't know, we'll all have to call her lender.
You let us know. Tell us how it goes. Tell us how it goes.
So seller pays compensation, it just explains all that, the buyer negotiates the commission through the purchase agreement. We've talked about all that, so this is just pretty much reiterating all that, explaining it for them to read through it. For understanding, and then again, this form is also included the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. And this is pretty much telling the buyer, hey, I'm probably working with more buyers, I might be working with other sellers, I might be a dual agent in this situation, but it's just so they know that you're not my only client. Let's see, California Consumer Privacy Advisory Disclosure. I think it's pretty much saying we're not gonna share their information with anybody. And then here's that form. This is not part of the packet. This is the form, the identification of property. So now that we went through all this, you guys have an idea of how to fill this out. So what we're gonna do here is go ahead and I'm gonna let you guys come up with the seller's name and just if you can have your neighbor or one of your kids, whatever it is. So fill out either on the computer or on the form, as if you're working with the buyer, and even, you know, the whole packet. Right, fill out on the agency disclosure, on the actual, buyer broker agreement, what commission you're asking for, the duration of the contract, remember, no more than 3 months. Also, yeah,
I always get confused on this one. Let's say I buyer, the Denton Family Trust.
Mhm.
Can I buy a house with Denton Family Trust, like, as the owner of the house? As long as I sign that one trust part right here,
yes,
I just fill that out. and
yeah,
then-
but as far as being able to, I would check with, whatever mortgage company you're working with to see if, a lot of people buy the property and then move it into their trust, yeah.
But I'm wondering, can you just put straight in the trust without changing the title? It's like one extra step.
Yeah, there's a way to do it.
I was
but yeah,
wondering
you can.
If it's just, so then when you do that, when I send the RPA to the buyer,
Yeah.
do I put Denton Family Trust?
And then you're gonna sign Gina.
But then under the parties. Okay, you do it.
Yeah, so in the party section, just so you guys know, this is not part of the class, but when you go to zip forms and you're doing the party section, when you're working with an entity instead of an individual, individual being Gina Wynn, right? The entity being the Gina Wynn Family Trust. So now that's an entity, it's no longer an individual. You're gonna go to the party section, this is the transaction, right, of whatever property we're submitting an offer on. You're gonna go to the party section, and under buyer one, you're gonna see buyer one over here on the side. So you're gonna click on it. And then at the top, you're gonna name, the name of the buyer is gonna be, Gina Family Trust. Okay, and then we're gonna leave this alone. And then that's it. Okay, and then down here, this is gonna be Gina's name, that's gonna be signing for that family trust. So it's gonna be Gina. And, oops, last name. And then her email address, blah, 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 right, .com. And we need that email address in there because, on the bottom section, because when we send the forms out for signatures, the contract itself is gonna say the Gina Family Trust as the buyer. But when she signs it, when we send it to her email to sign, she's signing as Gina Wynn.
The same thing for the seller, right?
Same thing for the seller, yeah. So, yeah. So if you guys can go ahead and like fill out the contract and then we can go over it and just maybe we'll go around the room and see what you entered. Let's see how optimistic you are about.
Same
How-
one we had, right?
Yeah,
Is it in this packet you gave us, or are there separate one you're gonna give us?
no, it's that packet I gave you. And you guys can ask questions as you're going through it, but just wanted you guys to fill it out, just so you at least have that, you know, going through it.
So I have a question
Yes.
about the form for the open house. So
Yes.
I have to prepare the two form, right? So one form for someone who already has a contract with their agent.
Yes.
The other one is just, without the agent.
So there's one form that is like a sign-in sheet, and that one asks
Do you have
what the
form in
name.
here? or-
Yeah, the form's here. Let me, I have them open on my computer. Let me go write down the names of them. I'll be right back. So I can open them here, and show them.
I think, what do you have the paper with, probably only go all of it. This one is. Isn't that one of the one times? I was practicing.
Okay, thanks.
nice if they put an asterisk where you had to fill out, like required things. That way you would know what's not required.
On the computer, it's like highlighted.
Yeah. Oh, it is?
When you're like-
Oh, the required stuff is
I
highlighted.
but when you're trying to do it. I think it's best to do it on the computer first, print it.
Yeah,
Then. when-
especially because my handwriting is. Also,
But then do you leave the commission negotiable to do that in front? You write it in?
I'm just putting in 2.5 or 3 every time, and then I'm gonna add an addendum that says if the sellers don't pay, you're only liable for 1%.
I like that you guys are all like,
Yeah.
like.
Can you just have like a form like that, like a typed up form?
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, they're just gonna have to
For
trust you,
everybody?
you know,
If
if you're gonna agree to
So
that.
I thought about that too, but I'm kind of wondering, when you do that, do you do the agreement with you? I mean, everybody signs it.
No, I think it's when you discover whatever the seller is
Discover
willing to.
later.
OHNA,
So that's my plan. I'm just gonna put
That's
2.5 or 3 every time, and be like, you're only gonna be liable for 1% of the seller.
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
also
And then I think that you-
PSRA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
part
true.
that I'm kind of like.
So let me show you what those look like.
Well, what I'm saying then is, as soon as we discover,
Rhonda.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's Rhonda. That's what they signed, right?
I'm not super, I just like, I can't help it.
Okay, so this is the open house visitor form. So when you're holding an open house, you can either have, when buyers come in and they're working with an agent and they're just gonna sign in.
If you're working with the age,
If they're working with an agent, they're gonna write in their name, their agent's name, and then their email address.
what is this one called?
This is the
Agent-
open house.
agent email address or?
No, the buyer's email address, yeah,
They have agent, but you still have their email?
yes. And phone number.
This is called open house what?
This is called the open house visitor non-agency disclosure. So the initials for it is OHNA. So let's go over it here. So,
It's not agent.
yeah, this is saying, I'm not
Without-
representing you. If you come in here, anything you tell me, I'm gonna share with my seller. So, you know, just so you know.
Mhm.
Right?
Sure, like I was already.
Communication with agent are not confidential, then you go right there. The visitor writes an offer on the property through an agent, okay, that means that their agent, that is fine. Visitor wants to be represented by the agent holding the open house. Visitor should sign a representation agreement. And you can either do the PSRA or the BRBC, right? So let's say, you have this form in case they really want to sign in, they have an agent. But if they don't have an agent and they're open to submitting an offer through you, but not doing like a contract, like a 3-month contract, then you can have this at the open house too, this other form, which is the PSRA. And this is a property showing representation agreement. And this is just saying that I'm gonna represent you on this property only and just write the address and nothing else. So there's no contract with you for, for 3 months. This is just, if you want to submit an offer on this property, I'll share the details of the property with you and then we'll submit an offer on this one. And so if they do submit an offer on this, then they're responsible for a commission. Pay you a commission. If they submit to somebody else. So this is like a representation agreement pretty much, but for that one property. Or you can have them fill out this other form, the BRBC that we just talked about today.
and just have that one address.
And you could just type in that one address there. Or just lock them in for 3 months.
So as a best practice, would you have everybody sign that first one? The property in Ohana, would you have them sign Ohana first, coming in? And then later on, after they sell the whole house and they decide they want to put an offer, would you have them sign the second?
But if they sign the first one, they're pretty much saying that they have an agent, right?
That's
First one is with the agent.
Oh, so only if they have an agent.
Yeah, if they're working with an agent.
So if they come in the door next to Sarah, I want to see this house, and you say,
So you have agent?
and I say, not currently.
then you can sign the PSRA.
So you immediately get them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't come in,
You can't come in.
go sign a contract with an agent and then come back.
So
Right.
if you're not agree with this commission,
So the
then you
second
can
one
come in
is
and sign. And you have to find your own agent with what you want.
And guess what? They still have to pay that agent, so they have to pay somebody.
Carlos, I have a question for you.
What if they just
Wait,
wanna
you-
look at that?
Someone have a question at home?
Carlos, a question for you.
Yes.
Let's say you're gonna, meet a new client and he wants to do that works for leases as well, isn't it? This form?
There's a agency, one of these forms for leases, for rentals.
Okay, let's say you have a new client that you meet in an open house and he says, okay, I want you to show me 5 properties or 6. So you're doing a little tour. Which form will be the best one to make them fill it up before you do the tour? That way you don't lose your time.
Well, this property allows you to enter 3 properties in here. I mean, this form allows you to enter 3 properties. So if you want to do 3 properties, you can do that, or 3 at a time. You can do that. But I would just lock them into, maybe a month if they don't want to do 3 months.
So if you are at the open house, you have to bring up the.
Yeah, you probably don't need that many of
Oh,
the
the
open
first
house one. You probably just need maybe a couple. Yeah, but the second one, yes.
The second one, what we have to write on,
So the second one is pretty much the same thing, like if you have like for that specific property, right? And their representation period, let's just say, today through, let's say, October. Let's say 3 months.
4 months,
Oh.
30 days.
Sorry, thank you for seeing that. So 30 days, so let's say 8/20/24. And then, so, okay, 1 month, not 60, 30 days. Thank you, Gina. And then here, you're gonna say whatever you want to charge them, right? 2%, 2.5%. And then, let's see, cancellation effective upon receipt. I would say 30 days, check that box. Because it's not to exceed 30 days anyway, right? And that's it,
This is only for the seller's agent or the hosting?
the buyer's agent. Oh, sorry. If you're holding an open house,
I can do it.
yeah, if you're the listing agent,
Yeah.
or if you're an agent holding an open house for somebody,
Yeah.
right? You can have these forms up. And it's just signatures.
What if someone wants to just look at the house or the neighbor and they're like, I'm not gonna fill that out, I just wanna
They have
look
to,
at that.
they can't look at a property without having a contract signed with somebody.
Yeah.
They can't even
So
just
sign the other one,
They
right?
have to have a contract signed with somebody to be able to
To
do
even.
properties, yeah.
How long will it take for the world to go?
You know what, when they start going out, they start seeing this, right? People start saying, nope, you need an agent, and then they're gonna tell their friends, and eventually everybody's gonna know about it. They're gonna say I work the next day, you know, they kicked me out of an open house. I don't have an agent.
They discriminate against me.
Yeah.
What about the flyers?
What about the players?
The flyers, there's the pictures of the house. So can they take one of them if they don't want to sign? And they will see,
Well, they're gonna see the property on Zillow anyway,
They still have to fill
you
out.
know,
they have to sign something.
But
Yeah,
they just can't walk around the house.
but the
right?
getting a flyer is the same thing as going on Zillow,
Oh,
not the
yeah,
pictures, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's weird, because they're on the verbiage for the new BRBC zone, they're saying that you can't even send virtual tours to your clients before the plan is.
Oh.
How are they gonna enforce that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's already on there.
That-
So not a point.
So did you guys fill out your fire broker contracts? I'm curious, like, how many of you guys did 3 months? How many did 2 or 1 month? Just curious.
Well, you already preloaded that, it's printed up reports.
Oh, I did? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Actually, a lot of it's printed up.
I thought when I printed the sample, it wasn't supposed to include. Sorry, the sample wasn't supposed to include that stuff when I printed the sample, so. It did everything, huh? Even the percentages that I entered,
Yep.
exclusive was check warranty. And now you guys know how much I charge.
Not enough.
Okay, but did anybody change the 2% to 3%?
3.5.
2.5, okay. So was it as easy as it looks? I mean, because it's pretty
Yeah,
easy,
yeah, it's easy.
but once you know what everything means and how to, explain it, it should be fairly easy.
So that was one way it's gonna start to,
We should start using it now. It's available on zip forms already.
okay, so,
But the commission section in the MLS the field is gonna be, I think, is it August 17th? So no more commission offering than us after August 17th, on August 17th.
But technically,
That doesn't mean that they're not willing to pay. But Richard said there's a form that if you have a listing and on the listing contract, the seller agreed to pay commission to the buyer's agent. Because on the original listing contract, it has the total commission and how much you're gonna give offered to the other agent. That you have to send an addendum to that listing contract that says that that's no longer part of the contract.
And now,
That it's not enforceable, pretty much.
what is it, excuse me?
It's an additional form that you, like, for existing listing contracts that you send to the seller, that lets them know, hey, you're not bound by this anymore, by having to pay the commission to the buyer's agent.
Yeah,
So,
So if I wanted to add an addendum saying that if the seller's agent isn't offering a compensation for buyer agents, that the buyer is only liable for 1%, like, how would I add that in?
so you're gonna go to, if you already have the form open, you're gonna click on forms.
Okay.
And then you're gonna click on add form. And then you're gonna click on form libraries here in the middle. And then you're gonna type in addendum. Actually, I wanna go to the car library, so. No, these are the forms that oh, there we go. No, the keyboard wasn't.
Yeah.
No, because I was trying to get it to work here. So addendum 1, and you're gonna click add. And when you add it, it's gonna probably add it to the bottom of the, did it add it up here?
Yeah.
Okay, so click on it up here. This is what forms are included in what you're working with now. And then you can say this is addendum 1 to the residential, check other, and then type in BRBC. And then dated today. And then you can write whatever you're looking for. But I would not send this to the listing
Yeah, that would just, yeah, that's actually just for the peace of mind of my buyer, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think I would have it. When we
Because
talked about
when they
earlier,
sign-
Gina, I would actually have it, because it's not gonna
that's
change.
what to say on the,
Yeah, regardless.
He's saying that,
That
is
would
there a
give
way to say
Like,
on the contract, the buyer's gonna pay me 3%?
but you would say.
And then the addendum's gonna say, in the event that the seller does not pay any commission or something, the buyer is only responsible for 2%. So it's like less.
Okay,
So I think that's the way to get around it.
Yeah.
and never.
I think there's a way to,
To make your buyer feel a little bit more at ease.
Yeah.
You could add that too.
Yeah.
So you could, that's just if they pay.
I think the best way is to include it in the loan.
I'm sure that eventually they're gonna figure out a way to do that.
Yeah.
And they're gonna offer loans that will probably pay the commissions,
Yeah,
but,
I
yeah,
think
I
I
don't know.
heard in NAR, okay, one of those American, right, online, that considered. But that. Nobody really knows if the lenders will do that. But what you're asking, proposing to do is something that could work.
yeah.
It could work actually, but. You know, there's a million lenders out there that they're not committing to doing that right now. But eventually, it does sound like
They have to find a solution.
So does anybody at home have any questions on the BRBC? You guys feel pretty comfortable with it?
If the escrow. Never run the MLS. So I had them sign a BBC.
The CBC,
Apartment broker.
yeah, but it's not in zip forms anymore,
But it was,
but it's not anymore.
but it was, it was right here, okay, like 2 weeks
So,
ago.
okay,
It was.
so you're in escrow now?
Yeah.
And you sent one of those over?
Yeah.
They're still bound by that.
Oh.
Yeah, anything that was agreed to prior to the August 17th is still going to be, yeah, no, they're still, everything's still good for it, yeah. If you're in escrow,
If I'm not,
Yeah.
if I don't have to send this to my buyer, 'cause I didn't have it, so.
no. But we're gonna update the checklist in SkySlope to include this on the transaction side if applicable. So if you're representing the seller and then you add the listing and you convert it to a transaction, then you won't have to upload, well, unless the seller sends it to you, the buyer sends it to you, right, along with their purchase contract, but we'll make it if applicable on the transaction side, but we are gonna change the checklist a little bit to include some of these forms.
So I understand this is starting from the now, but it's when it's gonna be most
August 17th.
also.
Yeah, but that's what our MLS and board is requiring, that we start before August 17th or August 17th. But for California, January 1st, for the state, but our board that we belong to,
Mhm.
they're saying we're starting before that. Yeah. Yep. Okay, there's no questions, we'll just let you guys go, and then next week, the class will be 10 a.m. Normal time.
Thank
So-
you.
Is it the same one on the rent?
Thank
or-
you.
No, there's a different one. Thank you.
The difference is there is one different form for the